Appreciate being here today. What I'm going to talk everyone through is how we were able to stand up our TV program as a direct-to-consumer company. And that will give you a sense of how a company like Framebridge, that's a couple years old, is looking at activating new channels and moving up the overall brand funnel. Today we'll talk through what it took for us to build the business case for a new channel in TV, both linear and later on in streaming. How we were able to set our overall creative strategy to have something that we felt became a real strength for our brand. How we then executed a phased test and learn approach to be able to scale the channel up into a steady state where we can sort of be always on if we want to. And then what measurement and attribution looks like, which is very complicated. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Framebridge, we are the simple way to custom frame everything that you love. Our mission is to make custom framing a lot easier, accessible, and higher quality than what you'd be able to get from a traditional framer. The way that it works is that we can take a physical item or a digital item that you would have. You visit our site and you would place an order. If you have a physical item, let's say a poster or painting, then we will send you either a tube or a flat mailer to be able to collect your piece. And if you have a digital item, you can upload it straight on our site, and we operate a print shop that will be able to print that. When it arrives at our factory, our team will take about 2 to 3 days to turn it around, frame it to your exact specifications, and deliver it to directly to your address. We launched 5 years ago this month, and an interesting thing about our company is there's really 2 prevalent consumer use cases. The home decor use case, which is relatively evergreen, and then the gifting use case, where we see a really large spike in Q4, and with the other gifting holidays earlier in the year, as well as life cycle events like graduations, weddings, new homes, new baby. We're fully vertical, which is sort of rare as a direct-to-consumer company. We have a 100,000 square foot production facility that's based in Richmond, Kentucky, which is right outside of Lexington. We have 400 plus team members. The large majority of those folks are our team in Kentucky who are responsible for making these frames. And just this year, we opened our first 2 retail stores. They're both near our headquarters in Washington, D.C., one right in downtown D.C. and one in Bethesda. And the results on those so far have been outstanding and really help to hint at where we'll be taking the business in the future. So it's a pretty familiar direct-to-consumer journey. It's one that we like to think we've taken steps to really align with the strengths of our product and our brand. So it started in 2014, heavily focused on launching the company, proving the early concept and getting our earliest customers. At that point, we were addicted to Facebook. So 80% of our spend was really on Facebook. We were living very low in the funnel. And like a lot of D2C companies, for us, it happened around Q1, Q2 of 2016. We had our first little shock. And that was basically seeing our CPA on Facebook increase by about 35% over the course of a quarter. And when that's 80% of your business, that can be pretty destabilizing. So we rushed really quickly to build out a number of supporting programs, both to diversify our approach, but also to make sure that we could go out and get different customer audiences as well. So built a search program that was both paid and organic, stood up a direct mail program, stood up a series of audio programs that is really prevalent in podcast. And so that's also when we started to look at experimentation within TV. Within the last couple of years, as we've built a really healthy base of our first phase customers, we've started to shift a bit more into establishing our brand through investments in the top of the funnel, through TV and some other channels, working closely with our community of customers, tastemakers like artists and designers that we work with, and a number of different influencers that we'll work with as well to create really beautiful content that we can push throughout our channels. And then the retail element now, which really opens some interesting avenues onto local. When we looked at standing up TV in mid-2016, we really had 3 goals for the channel. So the first one, obviously, is to increase that level of brand awareness, which we view as being really key to fulfilling our overall mission as a brand. Secondly, we wanted to diversify that marketing mix based on what I had said about what was happening with Facebook. And we felt that it would, by having such a large impression umbrella, TV would allow us to be able to go and reach a number of new and qualified customer segments that we either weren't able to tap in the past, or we just weren't able to get as deep as we would like. And so how we do that? Well, like any time that we're launching a new channel, what our team will do is put together a qualitative and quantitative business case for why it makes sense for us to operate on the channel. So we had a lot of data of what we were doing in some other channels that were higher up in the funnel. And the thing that popped up to us was this idea of what I call the podcast tail. So if you look at this is a top 10 iTunes podcast that we worked with throughout all of 2016. At the end of 2016, after this podcast had been providing hundreds, thousands of customers a month, we were able to, they had shifted some of their pricing. We wanted to take a little break, and we also wanted to see what would happen. And so we decided that if we waited until the end of the year, and when we hit the holiday of 2017, if we invested again with them, would the audience be able to pop back up? And that's exactly what happened. But at the same time, we saw this great little tail that was basically free from a performance perspective throughout the whole point of 2017. And that was a great lesson for us that up here at the top of the funnel, you're gonna be able to, by creating brand awareness and getting your brand inside the consumer's mind, you're gonna be able to fuel that recall for when they actually have the framing use case, which is also an important point. This brand consideration cycle that we would have, we talk to our customers a lot in our customer research, and we realize that oftentimes it's gonna take multiple touches for us to be able to convince them to both shop with our brand and be in the right mindset to do so. So when you hear about custom framing, it's not necessarily an impulse buy, and especially for our best customers who are often framing large projects, it's gonna require multiple touches to be able to get them all the way through to conversion. And so we really need channels that can have those multiple touches that we want, and that can also educate them about our process as we go along the way. Within the direct-to-consumer space, we had a lot of peers in 2016 especially who were trying to figure out the space at the same time. What does TV look like for a brand like ours? And there's been a real gravity around the number of agencies that have popped up to support brands like ours. So we did a ton of research. We talked to, I'd say probably 24 folks on the agency side, or with peer brands, or with investors who were standing up similar TV programs at that time. And what you learn there is that there's 3 or 4 different avenues that a brand could take, and we really sought out the one that was best for us. We also looked at the strengths of the medium, which for TV is 3 things for us. Storytelling, it allows you to go a little deeper into the way our product is used and how it relates to a customer. It also allows us to, I'm blanking on this one. The visual element, of course. So it allows us to have the visual element for our brand, where we have a really beautiful, not only the artwork, but the frame itself that we care about. It allows us to convey the quality. And we also were looking for something that would be palatable from a test perspective. We weren't looking to stand up TV with $1 million plus buy, where we know that that's a new channel and that would represent a gigantic proportion of our overall marketing budget. And so we were able to find things that were a much smaller fraction of that, and realize that we could get signal from which we could optimize and make follow-on decisions. So once we had the business case, we moved on to the creative strategy. One of the key things that we would continually hear from folks that we talk to is, do you want to be brand, or do you want to be performance, or DR? And we always felt that that was a bit of a false dichotomy. They're basically saying, do you want to have something that can be very sort of beautiful and ethereal, but not necessarily sell your product? Or do you want to have something that's classic, infomercial, yell and sell, pushing a promo code or pushing a URL for your customer to go visit? And we sort of rejected that. We felt that with a 30-second, 60-second window, we could plumb the depth of what our brand was about, and we could also educate the customer. It combines the emotional connection with the value prop and the process overview. So what we did in developing our creative was invest in well-rounded brand films that we felt did both of those things. We also worked with our creative agency to optimize for multiple assets. So one shoot produced really 3 assets, one that was a bit more brand-oriented, one that's a bit more process-oriented, and then a holiday version that we could run at a key time of our year. And what that did with testing as well is that we could then insert other videos that we've developed either through our community of influencers or through our in-house community, our creative team, to make sure that once we establish baseline with our core brand films, that we have a sense of how we can run with those. So this is our first film. It speaks a bit more to the emotional nature of our brand.
Framebridge Christmas '89. Framebridge a day at the beach. Framebridge your first real piece of art. Framebridge James J. Campbell, III. Framebridge the Roller Derby League champs. Framebridge Nana's zucchini bread. Framebridge a blade of grass. Framebridge the girls. Framebridge everything that matters. True custom framing made truly simple.
Great, and then we also cut this one. This is a bit more of a bouncier, fun commercial that takes a look at what it's like to shop our brand.
It's simple. You've got something you want to frame. You can upload it, or you can just send it. Not like that, by mail. And a free shipper will provide you. Your piece will be meticulously custom framed in America at our very own factory. We'll send it back to you for a fraction of the price and a lot less time than traditional custom framing. A Framebridge box will show up at your house, and you'll put that something you've been wanting to frame on your wall, and it'll look amazing. Framebridge.
And so we tested these two against each other throughout our early pilots, and in a really good fashion, we saw that they really track together. And so what we've been able to do is run, this is on basically what like our internal version of a CPA would look like. We were able to switch and run those. If one gets a little tired, we'll put the other one in there. And we start to segment them by audience as well. But the best part is it gives us a really clean baseline. So as we've tested other creative, we've been able to use that as our measuring stick. So speaking of testing, we wanted to stand up a really unified test and learn approach that our whole team could use. And the key thing there is that we're looking to unite the strengths of the channel with television itself with what we feel are the strengths of our brand. And so here's what we did. We ran 5 pilots in 2.5 years. Each pilot was optimized for a core metric or a core learning that we were looking to uncover. We started linear first, and then last year in 2018, streaming really sort of parted the waters for us, where a company like us could buy a lot more programmatically and didn't have to do really large dollar single buys with a single provider. We tested into our programming and timing, so you get a sense of program, channel, and day part that works best for our responsive customer segments. And we continually work to perfect the funnel path. So TV does a lot up here to drive impression value and drive to your site. But then through your site, you're able to track exactly what are the different channels that are growing because people are hearing about us, and what's the effect on some of our retargeting funnel on Facebook and display, and then following on what's also the effect with our email capture and persuasion. And so just a couple of views that we'll show here. You can see our pilots starting on October 16. Again, that one was really about trying to just focus on the overall lift of the channel. As we shifted to 2017, what we looked at was what does that user path look like? We were really looking at trying to figure out what's the lift and the effect on Facebook and on search. Into last year in 2018, we were investing heavily in streaming. You'll see that the impression value here is going to be a lot smaller, but the responsiveness is about 3 times as higher. So it really evens out from an apples to apples perspective. As we then got into last year, or earlier this year, we wanted to test both at the same time to see what the effect was there. And then going into the end of Q1 and into Q2 of this year, we were looking at what we feel is a really key time in our market, where home decor is cresting for interest, and at the same time you have gifting around Mother's Day, Father's Day. And so that was really our 5th pilot. And at that point, we felt that we had something that was stood up on steady state. Down below is a sample linear spike that we would see. So from a linear perspective, this you're seeing visits to our website, and then these sort of spikes with balloons on the top. That represents pieces of individual programming that are driving traffic to our website. And so based on that, we're able to know the effectiveness of programming. We're able to know exactly the users that are our system, which is machine learning backed, is attributing to TV. And then we're able to follow those folks through both our GA and our CDP to know what they go on and do with our company. And that leads me into measurement and attribution, which is really for our team about finding direction to move forward using imperfect data. The key thing, I continue to say, there's no single solution. I think that it's a huge opportunity to crack, but no one's done it yet. And so for us, we've tackled it a lot in-house, and we solve one problem at a time. And the way that we do that first is we look at the incrementality of the channel. What is the lift for the dollars that we spend? And what are the key indicators on where we can say this is specific traffic and these are specific sales that are coming from TV that wouldn't be there before? We then take that and plug that into our in-house attribution system so that we can take a look at the channel level and know what is both the credit that TV should be getting for visits and conversions that are happening on our site. And then at the same time, using some statistical regression, what's the correlation between some of the channels so that we know, okay, we're gonna go spend in TV. Now that's gonna kick up our retargeting budget on Facebook. And we'll use that for go forward budgeting and what our overall marketing and media mix looks like going forward. Then lastly, we'll break it down based on what I had shown earlier, being able to take a look at the customers and what they go do. We can then do customer level attribution. So we know for sure this is a TV customer. Based on that, we're able to figure out what the AOV is of the customer, the long-term value, the lifetime value of the customer, and then working with some of our data partners, we'll plug in some demographic and behavioral profiles for these customer segments. And so just as an anecdote there, we know that our TV customers, they're much more, our linear TV customers comparative to streaming, they're more likely to be older, they're more likely to be higher income, to index highly for home ownership, and to index highly for having children. So as we are looking at our new round of creative that will come forward into next year, we're breaking out the creative approach to better fit those customer segments based on how those cohorts, the profiles of those cohorts. So this is just a quick review. We started with a really detailed business case based on what we've been doing as a marketing team and all the industry knowledge we should capture. We had developed test creative that we felt served both our brand and our business goals, and that's something that we were real sticklers about. We put in a highly iterative test and learn approach that would allow us to scale and make sure that we're investing heavily in the channel. And then we continually everything backed up by an attribution approach that was trying to solve for the challenge at hand or the open question that we had. And usually that's around lift, what are the cross-channel effects, and what is the customer value that you get from the channel. So that's it. I'd love to open it up to any questions in the minute or two we have left. Yeah.
My name's Kieran from Digital Fuel, and I'm just wondering how you how do you measure the customer and attribute to the customer in particular? Yeah,
on the customer level. So two. One, our system will be able to mark a customer when they hit us when they hit the site on the spike. So you look on this these spikes right here, that really big one, that's probably Rachel Maddow. So this is a Rachel Maddow customer, watches it, sees it, second screens it, goes to our site. Okay, now we have that device ID. We can follow that customer through, and our systems will help know, okay, that's a TV customer. Secondarily, we get enough of those, and what we'll do is we'll work with third-party data partners to start to fill out profile so that we know what they look like. We're also pulling in our first-party data so that we can tell how they're shopping our site, the type of products that we're buying, and what their overall lifetime value looks like.
Hi. Minan from Rugs USA. I'm just kind of curious, when you ran TV, did you find it drove a lot of traffic through other channels, or does it tend to stand up by itself? So for example, like people watch TV, Google FrameBridge.
Yep. Yeah, so the number one channel that's most responsive is going to be direct search. People just go right into their browser, framebridge.com. Secondarily, the other forms of search. So there is a big bump in branded search. There's also a big bump in non-branded search, which will say like framing company online. And that's partly probably because we haven't gotten our brand name across to that person, they've forgotten it. And then From a follow-on, those are the main ones. Then from a follow-on perspective, you'll start to see that because they visited our site, our retargeting will really pick up. And so we're spending more dollars on Facebook and on digital display to continually track those people as they go through our funnel. Good time. Oh, actually, one more.
Hi, from a customer acquisition cost, how are you thinking about TV versus retail and the cost and spend and lifetime value of customer once, from each channel?
Yeah, so there's two ways that I'll answer that real quickly. So far what we're seeing is that nothing beats retail. It's just, especially for the stickiness of our model, and especially where half of our business is items that people physically need to bring in and hand over to us somehow. Retail, people will approach it more like an errand or a task, right? Like if I'm going to go to the framing store, I'm not just framing one thing, I'm going to bring this whole handful of stuff that I wanted to get up on this wall. So nothing beats that, but linear TV, I'd say indexes 5–10% higher than our average, and streaming is a little bit below. So it does net us what we feel are really quality customers. But the other thing that's interesting about that question is, how do we view TV in combination with retail? Because for an online company like ours, retail really can help to be what I would call like a cost to acquire customer reducer in a really big way. And so what that really does when you stack your channels on top of that is it makes them that much more efficient. You're just giving them two options. So it's hard to view them as like this versus that. I think it's more effective to view now, and this is what we're working on now because our stores are so new, but that's the really dynamic play that has a lot of opportunity behind it. Cool. All right, thank you guys, appreciate it.